everyone. Our topic for today is about clauses. Clauses come in four types: the main or independent, the subordinate or dependent, the relative or adjective, and noun. Every clause has at least a subject and a verb. Are the parts of a clause? The subject plus the verb is equivalent to a complete thought. Here is an example. Lazy students whine. The subject are the students, while the verb is the word whine. So here's an activity. Identify the subject and the verb in these following sentences. Cola spilled over the glass and splashed onto the counter. My dog loves pizza crusts. Mrs. Russell hit the head of the boy with a chalk eraser. Great job! Now let's move on to Van Valen's role and reference grammar. In Van Valen's role and reference grammar, the clause is divided into two parts, the core and the periphery. The core contains the verb, which is termed as the nucleus. So here is an example of a clause according to Van Valen's role and reference grammar. Leslie ate the sandwich in the kitchen. Leslie ate the sandwich is the core. In the kitchen is the periphery. And the nucleus is the word ate. Now, let's know more about the core and the periphery.
Main clause, like other clauses, has its subject and its verb, but it must also have a complete thought. That is why it is also called as an independent clause. An example of a main clause is this: she started a fight with her. To check if it is really a main clause, we need to find the subject, the predicate. The subject, it is she. Now with the predicate, it is started a fight. You may wonder, how about the remaining part with her? It is what we call adjunct. These tell us about how, where, or when was the action or the verb done. In this case, it tells us about with whom did she start a fight with. Adjuncts are a part of periphery, which is basically everything you can omit in an independent clause and still maintain its complete thought. While we have a peripheral, we also have the core. The core basically contains the who and the what of the sentence. In this case, it is she started a fight. Does it have a complete thought? It does, because the sentence makes sense. All the given information support or are related to other information found in the clause. Therefore, she started a fight with her is indeed a main clause.
Now let's talk about subordinate clause or the periphery. The subordinate clause does not harbor a complete thought. It begins with either subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun and will contain a subject and a verb. Now the formula is subordinating conjunction or relative pronoun plus subject plus verb equals incomplete thought. Now we have provided a table of subordinating conjunctions and relative pronouns. Here are sentences with incomplete thoughts. Number 1. After Amy sneezed all over the tuna salad. After is a subordinating conjunction. Number 2. Once Adam smashed the spider. Also, once is a subordinating conjunction. Number 3. Who ate handfuls of Cheerios with his bare hands? Who, being a relative pronoun, left us wondering who really ate the Cheerios, because it leaves the reader wondering what happened next. Now, let's try completing the thought. A thought or a sentence will be complete once a subordinating clause is attached to a main clause. Formula 1. In front. Subordinate clause plus comma or punctuation plus main clause. Example: even though the broccoli was covered in cheese, Emily refused to eat it. Now let's try to identify. Even though the broccoli was covered in cheese is the subordinate clause because of the subordinating conjunction even though, plus a punctuation, which is a comma, plus the main clause, which is Emily refused to eat it, Emily being the subject and refused being the verb. Now let's try Formula 2 at the end. Main clause plus now punctuation plus subordinate clause. Example: Jonathan spent his class time reading comic books since his average was a 45 1 week before final exam. Now let's try to identify. The main clause is Jonathan spent his class time reading comic books plus a null punctuation plus the subordinate clause since his average was a 45 1 week before final exams.
Now that we've reached the end of our lesson for today, let's try to review some concepts that we have discussed. First one is that we have identified what a clause is. Also, the four main types of clauses are the main and independent clause, subordinate or dependent clause, relative or adjectival clause, and the noun clause. We've also incorporated some parts of the Van Valen's role in reference theory or the RRG. Those parts are the periphery and the core. The periphery can be identified as a dependent clause in the RRG, while the core can be identified as the independent clause in the role in reference theory. The core is where the verb lies, and the verb is called a nucleus in Van Valen's role in reference theory. Let's review the formulas of the clauses. The main clause has the formula of subject plus verb equals complete thought. Next, the subordinate clause have the formula of subordinate conjunction plus subject plus verb equals an incomplete thought. Lastly, we have discussed the relative clause, which has the formula of relative pronoun or adverb plus subject plus verb is equals to incomplete thought. And the other formula is the relative pronoun as a subject plus verb equals incomplete thought. So, that sums up our lesson for today. We hope that all of the concepts are clear and you did not have any confusion in this TED Ed. Just take note that the theories can be flexible enough for us to experience them in the English language, even in the small features of the English language, consciously or even unconsciously.